there are a lot of people out there who mightn't know who you are, although they'll remember what you've done. Would you mind telling us who you are?
So I'm a retired senior sergeant. I served 16 years in the New South Wales Police Force before I was discharged with post-traumatic stress in 2011. I was first diagnosed in 2001 after I jumped in the tray of a stolen ute at Redfern. Good idea at the time. At that stage, I knew I wasn't coping. I just didn't know why. Because there's no education or awareness about post-traumatic stress. I just thought I was weak. I was in the wrong job. But then I did the unpolice-like and unbloke-like thing, put my hand up, actually went and got help. As a result, I was able to return to work for another 10 years. I finished, I broke 3 Guinness World Records. I finished my law degree. I published my book. I was promoted to senior sergeant. I was also a very effective operational officer and a loving husband and father to my wife and my kids. So definitely went through a lot. Even though I was diagnosed with it, I didn't let it define who I was. Obviously, after being discharged from the police, I lost my sense of identity, didn't know who I was because we all just attach what we do as to who we are. So I became suicidal. There was one night where I almost took my own life, but thankfully I didn't. And now I'm fully recovered. So now I'm able to visit my locations and speak about all my events in detail. And I run my own business specializing in post-traumatic stress recovery and growth. So I love the fact I can use my lived experiences to help people around the world who are suffering, not just from their service, but from past traumas, addictions, and relationship issues, that sort of thing.
Yeah, see, that's it. I mean, a lot of these principles are applicable to almost all of that psychological trauma, I suppose, that you'd say to it. And as is articulated by a good friend of mine, Donnie Mackay, he said, look, it's the story that you tell yourself about what happened, which is related to the concept of how you define yourself. It's whether or not you think that what happened to you or an emotion that you felt or how you reacted is something that defines you. And that's understanding that is such a powerful, powerful tool. I actually remember seeing that on TV. And this is back in the day when I used to watch the news, which is, I stopped.
2001, yep.
Yeah, but I remember watching this. Oh, that cop's mad. Like, I'll try it. I'll play a little bit of the footage.
45 agent, I'm in the back of a stolen vehicle.
Did you say you were in this vehicle?
I'm in the train, can I get some assistance?
I'm not going to die here, but I had to be strong. I'm a policeman, that's what I'm supposed to do.
There's a vehicle being driven through the park.
What happens next to this cop?
Yes, that's a good question. Unfortunately, the footage doesn't show it, but it's
today working in Redfern.
Yeah,
in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Mate, how did that happen?
Well,
sergeants like this.
Yeah, well, at that time, I was in the job for probably 5 years. So first 6 months at Gosford on the Central Coast. Had my first car pursuit, foot pursuit, stuff like that. Had a guy pull a gun on me when I'm trying to arrest him after the car pursuit. Arrested an escapee from the local juvenile facility up there. Chased him over fences, jumped through pools and stuff, and all that good sort of stuff. So I was supposed to go to City Central, but I didn't want to go just to do that. I wanted to go where the action was, and that's when Redfern was really Redfern. Lots of riots, lots of action and stuff. So I actually organised a transfer to go to Redfern. So I've been there for a couple of years, been involved in a fair few things leading up to that. But that day, I had a bad feeling that, it wasn't going to be a good day. On the way to work, so I had this feeling that, it wasn't going to end that well. So got to work, got in trouble off one of the inspectors for something that was very trivial. I can't even remember what it was about now, but as I said, I could talk about my events. They don't affect me. So I was stationed with a brand new probationary constable to work down at the block. So we were just patrolling around the area as we normally do. And I saw this ute that was there. Like, I hadn't seen it before. Good chance it was stolen. We did a check on it. It came back as stolen. We could have easily just recovered it and got it towed from the area. But no, I felt like I wanted to arrest someone that day. So it should have been an easy arrest. Had the probationary constable was driving. It came down one of the streets. We boxed it in. I've got out. Thought, no, it's going to be an easy lockup. Approached the driver's door. Said, mate, look, you're under arrest. You're a stolen vehicle. Next thing, I'm in the tray, the ute hurtling down the road. Like, I had no idea. Like, I still can't remember this day how I got to standing from beside the ute to actually being in the back of the ute. There's like a blackout or something. I can't remember doing that. Maybe it's some transition to a timeline or something. I don't know. But I end up in the back of the ute. I'm looking back. My probationary constable's standing there going like, no, what do I do? So as you heard in the footage, like, no, I'm calling urgent. I need assistance. The radio operator thought I was actually in pursuit. I had to clarify that I'm actually in the tray of the ute. So the next 15 minutes was me being driven around, Sydney, Ultimo in peak hour traffic, him swerving over the road, ramming parked cars, end up having to smash my hand and gun through the window, held against his head, threatened to shoot him. Then the passengers jumped out, the drivers jumped out, had a foot pursuit. And he actually ran into a building for the police on a training day. Of all the buildings to run into, that's where he went. I got treated for my injuries and stuff, went to hospital, and that was the last day I wanted to be a policeman. That was it. I just couldn't do any more. And then I got picked up from the hospital in the back of a van with equipment. They couldn't even come pick me up in an actual police car, like a sedan. Got shoved in the back with all the shields and helmets and trays and taken back to the police station in the back of the ute, in the back of the van. Got back to the station, and the supervisor said, my then wife turned up, and the commander said to my wife, when you're finished with him, send him to me and give me a go. That was my debrief. That was my last day in Redfern, and I thought it was going to be my last day in the job, but thankfully it wasn't. Went and got help, able to return to work for 10 years and got involved in lots more stuff, lots more events. So still here. Wow,
good on you. Look, I've actually been talking to quite a few coppers about trauma, and obviously those recent terrible shootings have dug up a lot of events for a lot of people. And looking at some of the police social media sites, it really seems to have affected a lot of the retired and retired police who've kind of like finished up. You're somewhat of an expert in this area. Can you talk about how and why that would happen?
I know when I heard about that shootings, it affected me. Like, as I said, like, I'm recovered from post-traumatic. It doesn't affect me, but the fact is that as a police officer, when someone in the police is hurting, so are you. When something happens to someone in the police, it happens to you. We're still a bigger part of a policing family. So that sense of loss, that loss of community, that loss of identity, that not being able to help to know what's like to be in a similar situation where you could have had the same thing happen to you. Like, I was involved in, I think, about at least 20 life-threatening incidents in my career. And just knowing that at any stage that could happen to you, but the fact that these young constables were in the job for a very short time, it happened to them, it was an ambush, the way in which it happened, it would have brought up a lot of things from everyone who is serving and not serving because of their experiences in the police. So they've got that. A lot of people are struggling because of their service, and then they see something like this happening to someone who is serving, and it brings up a lot of traumatic memories and feelings of grief and loss and hurt for them and what they've gone through as well.
Yeah, you can't help but think of every driveway you've ever walked up. It's like,
yeah. Because what happens is when we experience the trauma, the mind looks at what we're doing and what we're experiencing, and it basically puts a flag in the event. So when we experience something, then whenever we do something similar in the future, the body's always in that flight or fright hypervigilant, looking out for those dangers. So no matter whether it's in our personal life, our childhood, relationships, or at work, we're always taking in information. The body's always keeping score in terms of what's good, what's bad, what's not. And then when you get triggered, you're reacting with an emotion, you're attached to that original experience. So this sort of stuff, if it's you experience, because the trauma hasn't got to be something you experience. It could be something that you witness, you hear about, or something like that. It hasn't got to be specifically you involved in an event. Like, a lot of people seeing that, then every other policeman would have, when they go to a certain type of job similar to that, they'd all have that same sort of thing. That's what happened to me. That could happen to me because it happened to them. Like, I was involved in incidents at work where there was a car pursuit where the bloke was driving through a park right directly at me, trying to run me over. I was about to shoot him, but that night I heard that a policeman had been charged with murder for a similar sort of thing. So you're reacting to what's happening in front of you based on your own experiences, based on what you've experienced, what you've heard, what you've seen, and what you've been taught. So any police officer who now go to a similar sort of event based on what happened in that location can be affected by it and can underreact or overreact based on that experience and be affected by it in a negative way.
Yeah, I've had a couple of people, speaking to my podiatrist the other day, my feet aren't going flat, although my wife is, my wife's had great, 30 years and your feet are finally going flat. That's not what's happening. But I was talking to my podiatrist, and he was great guy. And he's just like, oh, I know you're an ex-cop. God, that must be tough for you, blah, 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 blah. And how's that going to affect the training? And I said, look, the police, in some ways, it's like the military. Like, I know some pretty high-ranking military officers, And in regards to training, they say, look, we're always training for the last war that we fought and probably the last battle that we lost. And you can understand how and why that's happened. Like, that's not a mocking thing. It's like can you see in the future? No. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen.
You can't
know what's going
prepare
to
for everything.
No, you simply cannot. But that is going to, and I suspect it's actually going to impact training on it in a negative way. Actually, it kind of like might get a little bit, the pendulum might swing a little bit far. There is my understanding of Operation Lighthouse in Victoria was the reason there were a disproportionate amount of police shootings in Victoria is because they were training for the Wall Street murders. When those two coppers were bounced, and they said to themselves quite reasonably, "Hey, never again. That's not happening." But what it meant was, the results were, and I'm not saying anything or implying anything, but I'm just making an observation that it did result in public criticism of the police and questions as to asked as to whether or not the police response was appropriate at that time. Again, I'm not commenting on anything like that. I'm just making an observation of the dynamic. So yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about that, to be honest. But sticking on this particular topic, how can police or any other first responders, because we're talking about coppers because that's what we are, we're ex-coppers, but this is a first responder thing, and I really do want to acknowledge the excellent work that the fireys do, Ambos obviously, and the people in A&E who are just absolutely amazing, the blood and guts they see. Oh my God, that's so credit to all them, and this applies to all of you too, if you're listening, and I know you will. What do they look for? How do they know? Like, what symptoms should they be aware of? Like, what feelings should they kind of like say, "Oh, this is something that maybe I need to go and talk to someone about"? Can you talk about?
Yeah, so with something with post-traumatic stress, it can come from one incident or it can be an accumulation. So it may not be just something that comes up all of a sudden and just shows up. It may be something that actually gradually increases or decreases over a period of time. So things like you're starting to lock yourself away, you're just not socializing as much, you're starting to feel overwhelmed and react with certain emotions, you're starting to feel anxious, you're always on this hypervigilance where you're looking around for dangers, trying to see what possible negative things that could happen to you. Using alcohol to cope, being less sociable, being less motivated, having trouble sleeping, flashbacks, nightmares, that sort of thing. So there's lots of things that you may not get all of them, you may just get some of them. And the best people to see that is probably your wife, your partner, your spouse, whoever that is, because they can see the signs in you that you may not be able to acknowledge or actually see. You just may think that's all part of the experience, that you're doing okay. But it's important that other people who know you actually see you might start to snap and get angry or get frustrated or just explode for no reason, or you may not want to go to a certain location because of something that's happened in the past, or you may start to just be always feeling anxious, and really feeling really sad and overwhelmed. There's lots of different things that you can actually look out for. That it doesn't mean you've got post-traumatic stress. Like, you don't have to be diagnosed with post-traumatic stress in order to get help. If you're starting to feel that you're being affected by stuff, whether it's in your life, your relationships, or work, then reach out and get that help. Because if you don't do anything, then that stuff's going to keep compounding, layer upon layer, and it's going to get harder and harder for you. So until you lock yourself away, you isolate, and you build this massive wall around you, and makes you even harder to get help. So it's important to acknowledge even the slightest changes. Okay, I'm reacting to this. I wouldn't normally do this. I wouldn't normally feel this way. Wouldn't normally just explode. I wouldn't lock myself away. I'm drinking more than I used to do. I'm not socializing as much. I'm have trouble sleeping. Just acknowledge that they are signs and symptoms. And I see the symptoms of post-traumatic stress as actually being positive. It's your body's way of saying to you that you've been affected by stuff in the past and that you need to do something about it. It's like the symptoms like having the flu, like runny nose, sore throat, fever, whatever it is. That's your body's way of saying that you've got the flu. If you didn't have the signs and symptoms, you wouldn't know you had the flu. If you didn't have the signs and symptoms of post-traumatic stress, you wouldn't know you'd be affected by it. You'd keep doing the same sort of things, and that's not a positive thing to do. So it's just your body's way of saying, look, you've been through some trauma, some things that have challenged and confronted you, that at the end of the day, we're all human, doing sometimes very inhuman job. It's your body's way of saying that you've gone through a lot. You need to take time for you, take a step back, reach out, get help, recharge, do what you need to do in order to process those past events so they're not affecting you. Because as you
That
said
sounds-
before, yeah, it's not, as your friend said before, it's not about the actual event that has the effect. It's the meaning and emotion we're attached to it. That's why people can experience the same event and walk away with a different meaning and emotion from it, because it's not about itself.
Absolutely. And one of the there's so many things with that. One of the problems is, people think, oh, that's weakness. That person wasn't affected by that way. Well, no, that's just simply not the case. Again, that person is coming from a different place. They're telling themselves a different story. They experienced it different. And any copper who's ever taken a statement of someone, because like there have been times where I've been taking statements off people for major incidents and I'm going, were you at the same thing?
Yeah, it's everyone's perception is completely different, and how they react and what they see is based on their own experiences, their own trauma, how they're raised, their own coping mechanisms and stuff like that too. So we all see life through our own lens based on what we've experienced in the past. So everyone, as you said, experiences the event differently. They can give a different version of the same event.
Absolutely. But the two big takeaways I got from this, and I just want to make sure I got that correctly, is first, be aware of your feelings. So actually kind of like sit down and like, notice how you're feeling. Second, listen to your loved ones, your friends and relatives. Like if they're telling you stuff you don't want to hear, you probably need to hear it.
Yeah, and the thing is that we all think that it's weak to speak. You can't reach out for help and stuff like that. So when someone says, look, are you okay? You go, yeah, I'm okay. No problems at all. Or you shut it down because you don't want to acknowledge in yourself the fact that you're not coping. That's why I think that when we know someone goes off work, we don't reach out to them, because of the fact that if we reach out to them and acknowledge how they're feeling, that they're not coping, we have to in ourselves accept that maybe that's how we're feeling too. But now if we don't acknowledge them, then we haven't got to acknowledge ourselves, and that just means the problem just keeps existing until you get to the threshold where you fall off the perch too.
Yeah, you got to name the demon and you got to exercise it.
Yep.
We've talked a lot about post-traumatic stress. And look, that's fair enough. There's something that concerns me a little, and I'd really like your take on this, is there is such a thing as post-traumatic stress growth.
Yep.
In my opinion, I'd really like you to talk about that, because anytime, and I'm concerned about, and I understand why it happened, because you need to put a label on something to treat it. It's like that person has post-traumatic stress disorder. Fair enough. This person's experienced this. This is the way they're processing it. We need to recognize something. As I said, we need to name the demon and we need to exercise it. We need to treat it. But in some ways that can be negative, because it kind of implies that, look, if you go to something traumatic, you're going to get a disorder afterwards. It's like, no, I know a lot of people who've been through, as you said, some stuff that are really, really terrible incidents, like genuinely inhumane incidents, and come out of it better people. And I don't think we talk about that enough.
Well, that's what, I mean, I do my business, my passion, my purpose is post-traumatic stress recovery and growth. I think the biggest problem is the lack of education and awareness around post-traumatic stress. I don't call it PTSD because of the fact that I think the use of the word disorder makes it very difficult, even more difficult for people, because of the lack of education and awareness around post-traumatic stress, we create our own associations based on our own experiences, based on what we're told. And I know there are people out there who are getting told that, no, this is a life sentence. This is something you have to learn to live with the rest of your life. You can't recover. You're stuck. And these are professionals telling these to people. I mean, I get abused on social media in certain groups because the fact I use the word recovery, I use the word hope and help. How dare I give people false hope? When I've been through it, I know exactly what it's like. But because we don't know about PTSD, we label it a disorder, we create that association. So we see someone at work one day, they're not there the next. Okay, they've lost their job, their relationship's broken down, they're addicted to alcohol, they've attempted suicide, or they've taken their own life. And to us, that becomes that label of PTSD. Exactly. So what it does, disorder means permanent. And if we don't know about it, we create that meaning about it based on our own experiences. So I call it PTS or post-traumatic stress injury or response, because it is ultimately a response. Okay,
exactly.
It's not a disorder. It's not a definition. It's a diagnosis. It's something you're being diagnosed with because of what you've been involved in.
And that's all it is. It's a diagnostic tool. It's a category that has been created by medical professionals so they can define something and then say, okay, well that's these symptoms. Now we know what to do with this.
That's where you fit into. Yes,
it's not something that defines you, and that's such an important. This idea of sticking a label on something, like, because I used to be a peer supports officer, and I was talking to some of the coppers, back in the day, and one of them said to me, like, Matt, like, they had this cop had suicidal, had ideas of suicide flashed into their heads. So like, Matt, that means this person stuck a label on it straight away. That means I'm mad. I'm a 504. There's something wrong with me. 504 is the police parlance for a mentally ill person. And I went, no, that's kind of like I said words to the effect of what you said before. I go, no, that's a normal human response.
Yeah.
Every human being is going to feel that way sometime in their life, to ask these questions, to have those emotions. And sometimes you actually can't help them because it's kind of reptilian. It's coming up from God knows where. But
when you're being affected by, when you've had the experiences, we react with the past trauma. So the mind's primary function is to keep us safe. So if we experience something similar in the past, has been a traumatic event, your body automatically goes into that fight or flight, into that hypervigilance to try and keep you safe. So it's a completely natural reaction. But once you understand that, okay, this is how the trauma affects the brain, this is why I'm being affected, this is why I'm reacting that way, like, it makes sense. You know that you are safe. It's got nothing to do with what you've just experienced. It has to do with everything you've experienced in the past. So it's completely natural. But because we don't know about it, we go through life and we shut down. We use alcohol to cope. We don't talk about our feelings and experiences, when at the end of the day, we are just human. We're experiencing unhuman things in our life because of the job we chose to do. And it doesn't become post-traumatic stress until 30 days. So even though you're involved in a certain event, you've still got time to go and get it fixed. But because of the fact that there's so many cops out there who aren't getting help, they've got so many layers and incidents they get involved in, they're doing nothing about. So it's just laying there. And then they're adding extra stuff on top of that. It's important that they go and get the help, release the emotions around those past events, so that they're not affected by them anymore. That's why we react in a certain way, because of our past. We get rid of those emotions, then we can actually look at things from a completely different lens.
Exactly. And something else, like looking at your website, which is excellent, incidentally, it's jeffgarland.com.au, and I'll put all that up there. I do recommend that to people. You've got all these, you've linked, you said, okay, my focus is on this because this is my area of expertise. But again, the principles are applicable everywhere else. Going back to my peer support officer days, I used to have coppers who would face all this really traumatic stuff, and it genuinely wouldn't bother them. And I noticed a bit of a pattern. It's like how they, again, the story that they told themselves, how they acted, they kind of acted in line with the self-image, the person that they saw themselves as being. But if they acted outside of that self-image in another area, so they went home and started yelling at their wife or screaming at their kids or, thumping someone they shouldn't thump, something like that, they acted outside of that self-image. It kind of was probably work-related because it was something to do with the trauma that they faced. But the thing is, they shattered the self-image of who they were. So it wasn't it's not that what was happening to them at work didn't matter, but what was causing them trauma is the way they were acting at home. You know what I mean? Like something else outside of work. They acted in a way that wasn't consistent with who they thought they were. They made a big mistake in their life, resulted in a divorce. They said something or they did something. And that's what really that crushed some people. I can think of a couple of incidents right off the top of my head. People were genuinely, and I don't say this lightly, Jeff, crushed by that. Can we talk about that?
So in terms of when we, especially as those as first responders or police, we attach that identity to ourselves. That's who we believe we are based on what we do. So we've got a professional image to portray. We can't show that we're effective. We've got to run towards danger. Everyone else runs away. So at work, we have to be this certain way. When we're at home, we become a different person. We become more human. And that sort of stuff, we tend to allow ourselves to feel and express more. And work, we can't do that. We can't show our emotions. We can't react in a particular way other than professional, doing our jobs. At home, we're not wearing the uniform, not carrying the badge. We're just human. And the things we get affected by in our, whether it's childhood or relationships or career, that affects us more when we're not at work because of this identity of who we believe we have to be. But when we're at home, we are just that person. So it's easier to express ourselves in that way, in a negative way. It may not be around the relationship. It just means we can't unload our stuff from work. So only place to do it is when we're less on guard, which is at home. It doesn't take much to trigger us. So stuff from our past, from our careers and things can very easily be triggered within the context of a relationship. it may have nothing to do with the relationship at all, but because of all the trauma that's happened around us and to us. But the relationship is the vehicle in which that we express and vent our emotions, because that's the person who's around at the time.
Yeah, it's a safe space kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you've hit on something there too. One of the other consistent threads that I saw, again from the peer support officer point of view, is if a copper did something, or a first responder, because I actually ended up talking to a couple of fireys too. But if someone did something that was out of line with their self-image, so again, and I think we actually need to talk about this, like they panicked, or they stuffed up, or
They were human.
Yeah, again, totally human.
Yep.
Totally human. They acted in a human way rather than self-image. They were kind of like, to use a movie analogy, everyone walks into a situation thinking that they're going to be like Luke Skywalker. So you walk into something traumatic and dangerous, man, I'm going to be like Luke, dude. I'm going to draw my lightsaber. It's going to be cool.
Yep.
Turns out you're more like Darth, but you're kind of actually dark, and you got a fair bit of that in you. And, you kind of didn't know it, and it was just being put in this situation that brought that out.
Yeah, because we are taught to act in a certain way at work. We've got this level of professionalism, this way in which we need to be at work. So when we at work, we have to act in that certain way. But when we're not at work, we're a different sort of person. We're not led by the same beliefs and values and principles than we are at work. So it can be very easy for us to do different, to express our ways in a certain way than we do to work. So we like to tell people, we go to work, we flick that switch on, we're in that mode until we finish our shift, we flick it off, we go home, we do what we need to do until the next shift. But that doesn't mean about being away from work makes us more susceptible from the traumas, because we're not at that work where we're in control. Away from work, if we've had traumatic experiences, we have less control in order to be able to deal with what's been going on. And we can't just focus on, because by focusing on other stuff, it holds back the trauma. That's why people struggle so much with COVID, because everyone likes to work or work out or network and focus on everything else to avoid all the stuff from their past. But when the world stopped, everything caught up with everybody, and they couldn't go and do the stuff they used to do. So same thing, when you're at work, you're focusing on your work, you're doing what you have to do. You're away from work, you get so much more time to focus on all the bad stuff that's been going on in your life. So you have less ways of being able to do stuff about it.
Exactly. And it's funny you should say that, because again, just talking to some people who were genuinely, and they weren't coppers actually, for complete clarity, who were genuinely affected by the very short lockdowns we had up here in North Queensland. Luckily, I don't live in Danistan, where where people were just locked up for ridiculous amounts of time. But one of them actually spoke to me and said, well, it gave me all this time to kind of like sit down there and think of all the shitty things that I've done. And again, it comes back to this thing we were talking about before. It's like, well, I recognize that, perhaps the most, and I'm paraphrasing, but I know that I've got this conversation right. Well, it made me realize that I'm a bit of a sinner, I'm a bit of a shitbag, and that's perhaps the most authentic part of me. Like I look back and like weighing things, this person said, it's like, I'm a kind of real dirtbag, and I've got a lot to atone for. Yeah. because that kind of like that kind of like went away from that there, and it's so strange. It comes back to the dual nature of these traumatic events that we're talking about. Like some people come out of them. Some people come out of these traumatic events better people.
Yep.
Better people, and not just like going through this. Like they go through a traumatic event and they come out better, even without kind of like intervention. Some people go in and they come out like not so good. And again, that's not better. That's not worth. That's not a judgment thing. That's just what human beings do. But there is that real concern that, and this is where it works both ways, is that's the most authentic me. That's me. So the sin I committed, or the bad thing I did, or the angry thing that when I hit that person, or whatever it is that I did, or because this person was civilian, I was talking about like the contextual things they'd done in their life, where shitty things that they'd done to other people in relationships, mostly, not completely. It's like, oh my gosh, well, that's me. That's again the label that they're putting on this idea of definitive authenticity. It's so could flip either way. It's funny how these things can be really, really good or
Yeah,
really, really
bad. Yeah, it's like when people grow up in at home and they've got a very violent or abusive alcoholic parent. They can either go, "Yep, because of what happened to me, I'm going to be just that way because that's how you do it," or because of what happened to me, I'm never ever going to do that again. I'm never going to drink alcohol. I'm going to be the best parent, sort of thing. And same sort of thing when you're involved in an incident. Like some people take a while to learn and see the lessons in what you've gone through. Other people can go, okay, because of that, I know that that's not the right thing to do. I can see the positive in that. I can see that no, it's not what it's not about me. They can look at the event in a completely different perspective. So they can walk away from it because, I mean, even with the stuff that I've gone through too, like I went through a lot of trauma in my life, my past, my career, and to the stage I wanted to suicide. But for me, the events are still there, just the meaning and emotions and have changed.
Yeah.
So, and I can look back and be very grateful for the stuff in my life, the fact that I went through my stuff, I had post-traumatic stress, that I was suicidal, all that stuff. I can look back and be grateful for that now. It's all about, as I said, it's not about what you go through, what you experience, it's about that meaning and emotion you attach to it. Some people are just very faster at adapting to looking at it in a positive way as opposed to a negative. There's always a positive and a negative. That's what I always say. So it's about how you can look at the experience in a more positive. What can I learn from this experience? What do I need to learn? Because sometimes it's just a warning to you, but we all tend to look at it in a very negative way with lots of negative emotions and things.
You think about what's behind that, Jeff. Really, that's this idea that suffering can be really, really positive. That out of deep, dark suffering, really positive things can happen. And sometimes they can happen really, really quickly. And sometimes they can, it takes a little while to process it. But from what I'm hearing there, you actually have a genuine sense of gratitude, everything that you went through, because it gave you the ability to process, because it gave you the ability to recover, because it gave you the ability to build the self-image of who you authentically truly are.
Yep.
And it was suffering that brought that out. Wow.
It was, it's for me, I see it as a gift. Like I have all that lived experience. If I hadn't gone through what I've gone through, I wouldn't be who I am today. And I can use that lived experience to help people. I've got an understanding of post-traumatic stress, of service, of relationships, of suicide that I didn't have before. So I can now be more compassionate and empathetic with people in terms of what they're going through, because I know and understand because I've been there myself. And like even like going back, like how it works is like even from a childhood, when we experience something traumatic, we link an emotion and create a belief, and that becomes the lens through which we look at life. So we start looking at life through that lens of the past, and then the universe then gives us experiences, relationships that reinforces those negative beliefs about ourselves. So the universe will keep giving you lessons based on trying to get you to go from where you are to where you could be, where you should be. But we're all looking through life based on our past traumas. So we're making decisions about the future based on our past. And we're going to keep making those same mistakes, attracting those same sort of people because of the fact of what we've gone through, because we think we're a bad person, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, because of what happened to us in the past, until we start to do things differently, start to live more consciously, start to react with the learnings as opposed to the emotions. So what we've gone through, it's not who we are, it's just how we are based on our past. And that's everyone. We bring all our stuff with us, and we're looking at life, what we want to do, how life is based on what we've been involved in. But if we're able to learn, look, just accept there's a lesson, this, what do I need to learn? Start setting better boundaries in terms of your life, what you deserve and things like that, and start letting stuff go from the past. You can start to look at life differently. And that's how everyone is going. They're doing what, especially in relationships, we don't attract who we want, we attract who we are energetically. And it's just all that stuff from our past that's affecting us in that way. Yeah. And for me, I've been able to let go of the stuff in the past. I look at life differently. So I'm able to be grateful for my experiences and see the lesson in that. But otherwise, people just keep going through life going, oh, that's just how life is. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve it. That's why I keep attracting the same experiences, the same relationships, because that's what I deserve. It's not. That's just the energy you're putting out based on what's happened to you in the past. If you start to let go of the past, live more consciously, you make better decisions, have better beliefs about yourself, you attract better experiences and relationships. It's just that's how you're looking at life. That's what you expect, and that's what you'll attract.
Exactly. It's a pattern of reality.
Yep.
And it's so simple. These things become self-fulfilling to a certain extent.
Yes.
But the real irony is the rub is this, Jeff. That's still free will. Like there's still free will there. When I've spoken to people and they've said this, they've said, look, Matt, you don't understand. Like, you know, I've tried this stuff. It's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm calling this right. It's definitive. This is the person I am. I'm never going to get out of this. It's like, no, at a certain level, and it's a kind of judgmental, sounds mean thing to say. It's like, no, you're kind of choosing this, like at a certain level.
Yep.
And that
because they don't know any better, they think that because it's happened for so long and what's always happened, and that's always what's going to happen. But it's only happening to you because of what's happened to you in the past and those beliefs and emotions that you've attracted to it. And that's what you keep getting the same thing. You keep doing the same things, you're going to keep getting the same results. You are that way now. It doesn't mean you can't make different decisions to do different things to get different results. But
and that's it. And it sounds like a judgy thing to say, to kind of like lay this idea that, you know, the fact that someone is suffering can partially be laid at their feet because they're not willing to reframe it or not willing to take the steps necessary to change, because you can't change what's happened to you in the past. But as we've discussed, you can change how you frame it. You can change all those kind of things, and through that you can actually change your future. Yep. So it sounds judgy and a mean thing to say, but there's real hope in it, right? It's
not judgment. It's just coming from a different level of awareness as to what's possible. Because we go through certain experiences, we learn certain things that we can and we can't. We don't learn, we keep getting the same things. But once you learn from it, you start to look at things from a different level of awareness. Yes. People you speak to, they're all coming from their own level of awareness as to what they believe is possible based on their own experiences. Where especially in terms of life and post-traumatic stress, my level of awareness is so much higher because I've gone through it and gotten through it. I know it's possible because I've been through it, done it myself. I help my clients all around the world do the same sort of thing. But it doesn't make me judgy. It just means that I can understand you feel that way because of what's been going on and that you think it's going to happen. But based on my own experiences and what I've learned and my people I've helped, I can see what's different. And it's just up to you whether you choose to stay there or do something different.
Yeah, it's a call. It's more of a calling out.
Yep.
And kind of, no, I think that's
just trying to tweak them, reframe them, get them at level of awareness, because they're going to be stuck in the same loop if they keep believing the same sort of things. But just sometimes it takes just one conversation to go, look, you may be that way now, but you don't have to be. Other things you can do, open the door up, and it's up to them whether they go and choose to go down that path or they're going to keep going down and doing the same things.
You're talking before about reactionaries as well. And this is something that's always really intrigued me because I got a mate, actually, he's a copper, he's a senior sergeant out to working out bush. He's working on his PhD, which is just amazing. And when he told me, he goes, look, you know, I put together a PhD thesis. It's been accepted by my supervisor. I'm going to go through with it. And I said, oh, what is it? And he said, look, you know, it's basically what I'm kind of looking at is to what background does a person have who's going to end up in the watch house or, you know, engaged in some sort of offending behavior. And I said, because this guy's super smart, obviously. I said, no disrespect, mate, but you're not kind of like really adding to, you know, the sum total of human knowledge. We know all this. What we actually need to know about are the reactionaries. It's like something that always intrigued me because I worked a lot up in Cape York in Indigenous communities. And I mean, speaking frankly, those places are just like, they are incubators, they are factories for broken, traumatized, brutalized people. And if anything about human psychology, it's kind of like no surprise that that's the case. But not everyone is like that, Jeff. And we don't know much about the reactionaries. We don't really look at them. We don't really sit there and go, well, this person was in this environment, considering the deterministic worldview, they've ticked all the boxes, they should be like this, but they're not. And we kind of there isn't a lot of literature on the whys of that. We always focus, because there's this really weird, and I think it's to the point of unhealthy, actually, this idea of social determinism. And I think fundamentally at a very deep level, that's actually unhelpful because it denies the existence of human free will, which is just wrong. And secondly, it means that it kind of implies that you're a bit of a blank slate. And third, that like it's hopeless. Like even if it was true, and I'm not for complete clarity, I'm arguing from the point of view that it's not true. But even if it was true, like even if we could scientifically prove that that was the case, you know, there is no such thing as human free will. It's a delusion. Is that the story that we should be telling? And my answer would be no.
It is, and I mean that's why, like, especially in certain types of communities, people who tend to offend, or in areas in which there's a low social economic background, that's what they're raised with, that's what they know, that's where they learn to do things. So, and that's what their expectation of life is, that life is hard, that they've got to do this to survive. I'm not a good person, I don't deserve it, so why should I go and do that? But there are certain people within that community who've gone through hard times, who've gone through certain experiences, who look at life differently. And that comes down to maybe not the community, but the actual person themselves, into what they believe is possible in terms of what their beliefs are, what their values are, and what they want to achieve. Because, as I said before, you can live in a very traumatic experience, and then because of that traumatic experience, choose to never ever do that again. Or you can also get in the same sort of path as what that traumatic experience or person did to you. So it's definitely, it's easy to see why people end up in custody because of where they're raised, where they live, who they associate with, that sort of stuff, based on what they've been involved in the past. But there are people out there who've gone through traumatic experiences in their life who've gone down a completely different path. So just because you've grown up in poverty or abusive relationship and stuff like that doesn't mean that you're going to end up that same way. It comes down to a choice of being whether or not you want to go down that path or choose not to because of that experience.
Exactly. Now, can we talk about the specifics of your business? Because obviously you have a high degree of subject knowledge to this and personal lived experience as well, although I do hate that phrase. But anyway, we'll use it. You do have the lived experience. You've got the hard yards. Can you tell us about your coaching business?
So for me, like
and the types of trauma that you deal with, the types of therapy that you use.
Okay, good. So, like, I love what I do. As I said before, like, I'm a big believer that things in life happen for a reason. So I'm a big believer that I went through this stuff in my life, in my career, to allow me to get to where I am now. I have my law degree. I could easily be going down and doing that. Like, I've recovered from trauma. None of my stuff from my past, my service affects me. So I can easily go, look, that's one chapter of my life closed. I can easily just go and focus on my law or something else that I want to do without having to worry about the stuff that I've been involved in the past. That's not my problem anymore. Okay, I'm good. Okay, but because the fact that I believe I went through that and was able to recover as hard as it was, the fact that I was suicidal, because I want to be able to help people. I made a decision that I was not going to let this diagnosis define me, and I didn't want anyone else to struggle because of it. So because I've been able to go through it and get through it and be able to talk about my experiences, and I want to be able to help people who don't understand, because it's the lack of education and awareness which is the biggest problem, because we don't know that we're going to see stuff in our career that's going to stuff us up, that's going to affect us. But hey, it's okay. It's human. It's okay to feel this way. And here's the signs and symptoms. Here's what to do. Here's who to reach out to. Like, there's lots of things. I want to use my experience to help other people. So for me, I created a business where I actually use my experiences to help people to process the events from the past. So I don't do talk therapy. I don't do exposure therapy. So there's no going into detail. There's no having to relive any events. I help my clients all over the world process their past traumas without going into detail. So whether it's child abuse, sexual abuse, domestic violence, post-traumatic stress, depression, anxiety, relationship issues, addictions, those who are suicidal, they're able to release the events from the past without having to talk about in detail. Because we all tend to think that we have to talk about events to release it, but you haven't got to relive the event to release the event. That's not how it works. That's how it always used to be. So I can help my clients release their past. So all we're basically doing, I use the modalities of NLP, so neuro-linguistic programming, which is all about changing our patterns of thought, interrupting our associations. And that's what I use to recover from post-traumatic stress. I use that modality. I've been doing it for 25 years. Love it, love it, love it. I do timeline therapy, which is actually my most favorite modality. It was introduced in England to actually help the soldiers come back from war. Okay, so all it is, it's about identifying what are the events in the past affecting you. We make a list. So what's the event, what's the emotion, and what's the belief? And then through the process, we release the trauma emotion by emotion. So I can help people release anger and sadness from their past in less than an hour. No matter how recent, how significant, or how traumatic it was, they're able to release that emotion within a very short period of time so it doesn't affect them. And I also do hypnotherapy as well, which helps to reprogram the mind, which, especially after you've released all the past traumas and emotions, then it's easy to reprogram the mind because there's no association between that traumatic event and any unhealthy habits that you've created. So I do things in a completely different way to a lot of other people, but it's very, very effective and it works because people don't want to talk about their stuff they've been involved in. That's why a lot of people don't reach out, because they don't want to have to go through it again. And when we're getting told that we're stuck with this, you have to learn to live with this the rest of your life, people don't want to go out and get that help. But because I've gone through it, I've got that level of lived experience, a much greater level of awareness in terms of what's possible, because I've gone through it and gotten through it. And I'm able to run a business where I can actually help people and have a conversation with you where we can talk just like this, as opposed to try and dumb ourselves down and have someone disbelieve that ever happens because they don't know, they haven't done it before. Like, if you were going to get your car serviced, you wouldn't go to someone who's read a book on how to service a car. You want someone who's had their head under the bonnet. I'm a similar sort of person. I'm someone who's got that lived experiences. I've actually gone through it. I've served. I know what it's like. I've gone through trauma, but I've also gotten through it. I can help you get the end results to help you achieve what you want to achieve without having to go to those depths or having to talk about them, because that's not a healthy way of doing things. It used to work, but it's not the only way to do things these days.
Yeah, not best practice. Not completely ineffective, but not best practice. So people find you if they need you.
Yep. So I'm on Facebook. I've got a Facebook page. Most of my stuff's done through Facebook. I'm also on my website, as you said, jeffgarland.com.au. Or send me an email at jeff@jeffgarland.com.au. Happy to have a conversation with anyone. I run events usually once a week. I've been doing them up until the end of the year, where I just basically tell people about my experiences. They're no obligation. It's just about letting people know what I went through, teach them in terms of how trauma affects the brain, in order to help them to understand that what they are going through is not something that they have to do for the rest of their life. They can look at things differently, and there is actually hope. There is help. You've got to reach out to that right person.
Absolutely. And that matters so much. It's like another mate of mine is Daryl Green. I sworn in with him. He was that mate, him and his partner were bounced down in Brisbane by a fella, and they was shot. Mate, it was genuinely a miracle, the amount of bullets that were shot at them and the amount of bullets that Greeny took and his colleagues took. Like they all got like 2 or 3 bullets in them.
Yeah.
And managed to survive. But like, I was on the phone to him after this happened, like, mate, how you going? Like, I know it was a while ago, but I'm kind of thinking this is probably going to be bells for you.
Yeah, especially when you've experienced something similar, then that's going to be triggered, because what you've been experienced is, because of your experience, that new experience is going to raise stuff for you based on what you've been involved in, whether it's been a shooting, whether it's just stuff in the cops, where there's been close calls, or just because you've served, it'll bring a lot of stuff up. So it's always going to be a difficult job, but there's just not enough support, a proper education, awareness around post-traumatic stress and what's possible. You start doing that, then the lives will start to be changed. I have a book.
Oh, yes.
My book, Split Second. I published it years ago. It took me 13 years to write it. So that's available on Amazon, Australia or US, or send me a message. I can send you the link. So it was not meant to be a book. It was just about me writing about my experiences, about what I went through in the ute and then earlier incidents in my career. So I ended up writing it over 13 years, which basically takes you from before I joined up to after I was discharged and being suicidal, towards my journey to recovery. So very good insight in terms of what it's like being a policeman. And it's me being open and honest about all my experiences, how I felt, what I saw, what I did, my darkest days to my brightest moments too. So definitely jump on and have a look. Highly recommend.
Just Google Split Second Jeff Garland. It comes up really easily and quickly. Well, mate, thanks. I knew this chat would be good. I've been looking forward to this one for.
We can talk for hours, I'm sure, based on. But I really appreciate you taking the time, and like people like you who are having those conversations with people, because a lot of people lock themselves away because of what they've been involved in, so they don't know. But listening to inspiration like yours and talking to people who have that experience can make a massive difference. And hopefully, this conversation will help anyone who's struggling, whether it's because of their service or trauma or anything else. But no, keep doing what you're doing.
Oh, thanks. One does one's incompetent best.